Welcome, Steve. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Hello, Peru. It is awesome to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to our conversation because we are going to talk about strengths and what our strengths say about us. So we are definitely going to get into that, but why don't we first start with who you are and what is your story?
What is my story? I title myself a confidence catalyst, which is just a fancy term for confidence coach. And, both you and I have engaged regarding stories, and we love stories. And confidence centers around the stories that we tell ourselves. If we tell ourselves negative stories, we undermine our confidence. If we learn how to tell ourselves positive stories, we can build up our confidence. So for those people that are struggling with confidence, it's a matter of getting them to learn and tell new stories, to change that story that I'm not good enough because of X, Y, and Z, to I have done this and can learn to do more. And as I work with clients and help them to tell these stories, they gain greater confidence in themselves and in their abilities to extend that confidence out into the activities that they're pursuing and doing and becoming more successful, because confidence breeds success. So that's me in my current world. I'm also an author, about in the next couple of months to release my first book called Apples and Oranges on Your Team, Bite-Sized Stories for Life-Giving Leadership. And this composite of stories, it's about 30 plus stories, and they're bite-sized, which means they're really short. You can read them in a couple of minutes. Even if you're a slow reader, you can probably read them in 3 to 4 minutes. But they're designed to get people to think about elements of how they interact with people and how, if they're a leader, how they might be engaging with their teams. And so within it is a lot of wisdom around how to relate to people to build influence, to be able to extend your ability as a leader to move your team in productive ways. So that's, again, me in a nutshell. I'm looking forward to talking to you today about strengths, because I am a YouMap coach. And for those who don't know what YouMap is, Christian Cherry designed this program. She wrote a book around it called YouMap. And it's basically an assessment that we take people through. We look at 4 areas. One of those is the strengths, which we'll talk about today. The other is values. The third is your preferred skills. Do you like to write? Do you like to read? Do you like to organize things? I mean, all of us have preferred skills. And then the fourth is personality. What are we geared towards? Are we geared towards service, or are we geared towards building things? Once we have worked through those 4 areas, we can create a YouMap profile of you that shows you as an individual, that uniquely one and only Peru or Steve Sullivan. There's nobody else in the world like you. And today we'll talk about the first pillar of that, which is the strengths. And even looking at the top 5 strengths that you have, I have. Gallup, who creates the Strength Finder assessment, will tell you only 1 in 33 million people have the same top 5 strengths. So for you in the UK, that's like maybe one other person has been identified with those 5 top strengths. For me in the States, it's more like 1 in 10. But then you throw in the values, and very quickly even if I am talking to another person who scored exactly as I did on the test, our values are going to be different, and we're going to start to see how those values affect the strengths and magnify those strengths in different ways. So knowing values is critical next step with your strengths, because your values will often tell us how you like to use your strengths. You know, I didn't get any values from you like I wanted, but I can guess, you know, having worked with you and the friendship that we have, that within you is the desire to extend love to people, a desire to be maybe show compassion and sympathy. Some of those are great values that, combined with your strengths, are why you're doing what you're doing today. So we will explore that as we go through your strengths. Do you have any questions on that?
Oh, we are going to talk a lot more about strengths. So thank you for giving us an overview about what you do and the YouMap framework. Before we get into that, let me share with you that we have a live audience building up here. So Jill Brown has joined us from Wales.
Hey,
and
Jill.
Hi, Jill. Thank you for joining us. And Carolyn is here from Singapore.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn. Thank you for joining us. And Jill says, I loved going through YouMap. I know you guys have done the YouMap work together.
One of my clients, yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So let's begin, Steve. Let's talk to us about what do you mean when you say, what do your strengths say about you?
Well, as I've learned more and more about strengths, I've come to realize that it's not just a label that you put on yourself and say, well, hey, yeah, I'm a great communicator, because you have communications as one of your strengths. It's becomes something deeply seated within you that may actually drive you in ways that you don't realize. It may get you to think, okay, I love communication. So what do I want to do? Do I want to stay in a finance job where I'm just crunching numbers, or do I want to get out and work with people and communicate with people? And so a lot of dissatisfaction people have in potentially their careers and what they're doing is because they're doing things that don't align with their strengths. And when I talk to people about strengths, I often tell them the best thing you can do is leverage your strengths. Stop focusing on weaknesses. Stop trying to get better at something you're not good at. Because, you know, even if you are not good at something and you feel that, oh, I should become better at this, chances are you can make improvements, but you're not going to make significant improvements. You know, it gets back to what are your strengths, and maybe an analogy I can use is that of an architect. He loves or she loves to design buildings, and they lay out the big picture. They are constantly learning about different ways to use the light and windows and different things like that, which enables them to make these great buildings that we see. Now, if I were an architect and I said, well, you know, I don't really know how to pour concrete or, you know, build the frame, and I should go do that because, you know, to become an architect, I really need to know how construction works. And I would say, no, you don't, because the bottom line is the time you spend doing that is not going to get you further in terms of where your success lies. Your success lies with your strengths and learning how to leverage those.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just too much focus on improving our areas of weaknesses. And And so many people focus on improving their areas of weaknesses, and from weak areas, they may turn them into average as far as the capability is concerned. But whether or not they would excel in those areas, that's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, so it also feeds into confidence people have.
Yeah.
If you're comparing yourself and saying these are weaknesses, I need to prove on them, you're actually taking that negative view of yourself instead of saying, wow, these are the strengths I have. If I use it here and there, I'm going to accomplish this great thing. And that will spur on your inner confidence and enable you to shine, instead of just stumbling around like I have, trying to correct a few weaknesses here or there.
I think we have all been there, haven't we? I remember when I used to work in the corporate world, improving on our areas of strength was such a big consideration when it came to performance appraisals. And if I look back at my own example, I was somebody who was brilliant at a lot of things that I was required to do, but I was good at Excel sheets. I wasn't the person who could code Excel sheets or do everything with them. I could still get the job done, but it wasn't my top-notch thing. And I remember being marked down year after year because of that. I mean, they ignored 9 other things where I was absolutely outstanding, but marked me down on that one thing. Now, I understand that when we work with large organizations, that can be an alibi because we have restricted numbers. But then it is such a horrible approach to performance appraisals as well. And like you said, it feeds into the confidence, and it's like, oh, I'm up against this wall. And that wall can be put up externally, or that wall could be put up by ourselves. So yeah, I think it's not the best approach to build ourselves.
Having seen your strengths, if you were a part of my team, and I knew you were doing spreadsheets, I'd be like, no, this is the wrong position for Peru. I need to find somebody who really is what we call an inward thinking. The strengths are kind of divided in 2 areas. There's 2 pillars of people-facing strengths. One theme is relator, the other theme is influencer. And then there's inward thinking people, which tend to be 2 themes there of execution and thinking. And so your heads down type of people tend to be in that thinking, execution side of the equation, and your public facing and people facing communications, those kind of things tend to be over in the people facing thing. So if you've made career choices where you end up in a heads down type of environment, you may find yourself dissatisfied with what you're doing because you're, in a sense, fighting against your strengths instead of using your strengths.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I've made one of those choices. Well, more than one, actually. I started with studying pharmacy, and it was such a heads down, work in the lab kind of job. My career back then, my goal back then was to join the R&D department of a large pharmaceutical company. Again, didn't pan out well. The second choice I made was software development, which required me to sit behind a computer and code. A worse choice. Finally, I found my thing. But you see, I was just not that heads down person, and I wasn't happy there until I got into that people-facing role. So yes, what you're saying about choosing jobs, choosing roles that are aligned with our strengths, that is so important.
Yes, and I've talked to people who are really good at something, and they'll tell you, I hate my job. So it's possible to become really good at something and make good money at it and totally hate it. And usually those people are looking for a way out of what they're doing into something that they would love to do. And the quicker they can learn what their strengths are and how those strengths might align with something new, and they make that transition, the happier they become. Because as you know, in the corporate world, we often take jobs to make money, and some of those are very lucrative jobs, and you tell yourself stories like, I can't afford to leave this, so you just suffer on. But eventually you get to an age where you say, money isn't all there is. I want happiness. And so you give up the money to gain happiness. And some people, by moving towards happiness, actually end up gaining financially as well. They can sometimes multiply because they've now found the area where they excel at, and they get recognized for it, and they get rewarded or compensated for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So this explanation, this insight that you gave to us about people facing roles and heads down role, is that the YouMap model or is that the Gallup model?
That's pretty much the Gallup model. Gallup will lay things out that way. And YouMap pretty much utilizes the Gallup thoughts around that. Now, what we like to do, which is beyond what Gallup does. Gallup just looks at the strengths. And again, they're looking at it from a corporate world standpoint. But you've got to keep in mind that within, just because you have communications, is that because you like to write, or is that because you like to sing? And if you're an artist and you like to sing, that may be your mode of effective communication, is through music, where you as a communicator are more effective through writing or public speaking. Wow. Things that musicians may not ever want to touch or do. And so the strengths can manifest themselves in different ways based on who you are as a person. And Gallup sometimes reflects that in their material, because they'll certainly ask people, how do you use the strength in your life? And they get some great stories of how people have used the strength to accomplish X, Y, and Z. But from a YouMap standpoint, there's so much more when you start looking at the values, looking at preferred skills, and then looking at the personality behind that. All of that creates a fuller picture that not only reflects the corporate world where Gallup often focuses, but it also extends into our personal lives and how we relate to people. I'll give you an example. One of my clients has the strength of achiever. And achiever is one of these driving strengths that people that have it are, they're goal oriented. They accomplish things. They work hard to get things accomplished, and they often achieve things. They're very to-do oriented. They've got usually to-do lists, and they track all that, and they love crossing those things off because that's achievement, right? But one of the things, with every strength, there's what I call an Achilles heel. Some people call it the shadow side of the strength. And with achiever, the Achilles heel to that is you can be more driven to focus on task than on people. And I remember when I was talking to my client, he was a young man, very successful. And he said, no, that's not me. I love my family. I'm all this. And then the next time we got together, he said, Steve, the light bulb went on. This weekend, I was working on something on Saturday for, this big project that I'm involved with that I really want to, get it done and it's successful. And my 6-year-old daughter came up to me and she wanted my attention, and I brushed her away. And then the light bulb went on. That's what Steve was talking about. And so he then later sat down with his wife and said, hey, I learned this today. Do you see this in my life? And she said, it happens all the time. And he was totally blind to how his strength was creating the way he was interacting with his family. And it wasn't in a way that he wanted. And so we worked on that. We talked about that. And I would tell anybody who's an achiever, the way to overcome your Achilles heel as an achiever with your to-do list is to make sure on your lists are relational things. So if your wife wants you to take her out for dinner Friday night, get that on your list. If your son has a baseball game and he wants you there, put that on your list so that that sense of achievement and drive that you have will come out and saying, oh yeah, I got to make sure I spend time with my wife, or I got to be there to support my son. And that will help bring balance to that strength. So that's a good example where it not only affects how you work, because obviously employers love people who achieve, but if you're not careful, I've seen many families that have come to ruin because the person with achievement didn't know how to balance that. And all their time was spent on the next thing they had to get done instead of stopping to spend time with the people that they love.
That is such a brilliant example you have shared with us, Steve. Thank you so much for sharing that. You remind me of one of the clients I had just when I had got into coaching. And this was a person who had the idea that relationships were the most important things to him. That's what his focus was. And when we started working together, in the very first session, it became apparent that it was just an idea that was important to him. He thought relationships were important. And when we did the wheel, which is such a simple exercise to do in the world of coaching, his wheel had only one thing, only one slice, and that was work. Literally just one slice, only work. And it was so enlightening in an appalling way for him to understand that he had this idea that relationships, his family were important for him, but all he was doing was work. So there was a discord, and then we were able to resolve it from there. But what you're saying is so powerful to understand. And in fact, you have given me a brilliant insight right now, because I see myself as an achiever. But if I look at my top 5 Gallup strengths, achievement is not one of them. Relationships are.
Yes, definitely.
And based on what you have said, I am able to, with the benefit of hindsight, I'm able to look back and appreciate why I have made some of the choices I have made, because achievement was extremely important for me. But what was also important was being a realtor.
Yes.
Being a relator, or focusing on those relationships. So yeah, that's really powerful.
Now, one of the things that we do through YouMap that's a little bit different than Gallup is Gallup, when you get the report, they say, here's your top 1 through 5. Through the YouMap process, we'll sit down and we'll talk to you about how these strengths show up in your life and which strength, or maybe 1 or 2 strengths, really are your motivating drivers. And that may not be the number 1 strength. And we, in the YouMap sense, we call it, let's break down the strengths as to here's a driving strength, here are passenger strengths. And so just like a passenger in a car, you may be the primary driver, but sometimes you get tired. And so then you turn the wheel over to the passenger. And so in the sense of strengths, you may primarily, most of the time, be doing communications in your top 5. But then there may come a time when you say, I'm I'm tired relating. And, I just need some, you know, more focused time, maybe with an individual, and you allow individualization to take over so that you can build that, that tight relationship with others. And so through the coaching process, we'll look at that and help you to say, so like in my case, my driving strength is connectedness, which is a relator strength. And my other strengths are learner, which is a thinking one, responsibility, which is execution, arranger, which is also execution, and context, which is a thinking one. And if you look at my thing, context is my number one thing. And I know why it's one. I know why it's my number one thing, because people who tend to have context tend to be people who love history. And I was a history major in college. I do love history. And so the assessment, if you answer the questions on the history part of the assessment, context goes up. But it is one of the more rare strengths to show up in the top 5. But it shows up in my life in the sense that I like to know where things started and how we got to where we are today, and what lessons we can learn from that to make sure that we're going forward better. Context is a great strength for that. So again, my top 5 would be ordered differently, but those, in working through it, to say, hey, yeah, the one thing that drives me most is connectedness. And that's been applied to my life in 2 different ways. When I was an IT leader in healthcare, that connectedness often meant looking at systems and how they work together, or process and procedures and how they work together. To some degree, also people and how they work together. But now that I'm outside of IT, my connectedness shows up more in how people work together. And what can I do to, in a sense, connectedness, you see the big picture and you see all the small pieces that make up the big picture. It enables you to rearrange those pieces to potentially bring about greater productivity, which, I love. It allows me to collaborate with a lot of people and have successful collaborations.
That's exactly what I was thinking in this moment, Steve. You are somebody who collaborates a lot with fellow coaches, with fellow business owners. And I think that's where the connectedness just shows, and you bring people together. Yeah.
Yes, I do from that standpoint.
Hmm.
Let's take a look at your strengths.
Okay.
Because you gave a great example of how you recognize now how some of your strengths have helped you in the directions that you've gone.
Yeah. So do you want me to tell you my top 5? I've done the Gallup work.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what prompted you to do the Gallup work?
Oh, I was invited for it. And so, yeah, I jumped on and I thought, well, I'm done working on my areas of improvement. I want to work from a place of values and strengths. And this work I had done rather recently. I did it in 2019. So I had been working in the field of coaching for a while. So I was in a place where I could appreciate the strengths-based work or the values-based work. So I would say that was a huge motivation, understanding myself more. Okay, so my top one was relator under relationships, which is not surprising. What's my next one?
Yeah.
My next one is maximizer.
Yes.
And that is under influencing. My
Here,
third is.
Let me, as you rifle off these, let me talk to you a little bit about each.
Go on.
So, people who have the relator strength often enjoy close friendships and finding satisfaction in working with people to achieve a goal.
Yeah.
Does that sound like you?
That sounds like me. And that is also one of the reasons why I enjoy one-on-one work as a coach. And I'm also somebody who has close relationships and I love deep conversations. I'm not the person you would see as the life of the party because I'm not the small talk person. I want it deep.
Yes. So the Achilles side of that can potentially get you into being close to outsiders who are not a part of your inner circle. And in the worst case, that you could use a term like cliquish. Some people go to that extreme, but I haven't seen that in you. But you might find that you love that inner circle, and you're maybe hesitant to expand that inner circle. Does that sound like you at all?
I appreciate my inner circle, but I'm not hesitant to expand it, but I wouldn't really be able to nurture or appreciate a relationship which is not deep.
Yeah, relators want genuine relationships.
Yeah,
definitely. So some of these Achilles heels are not things that necessarily show up because you may balance them with your other strengths. And that's our goal in YouMap, is to say, okay, if any of these Achilles heels shows up, then how can we help you utilize your other strengths to balance it so that doesn't become something that trips you up? Okay, so your next one was maximizer, right?
Maximizer.
And so maximizer, I can see in you because you love to transform something into excellent, not just average, excellent. You are all about excellence. And I can see that in your desire to help people tell their stories and to leverage their stories, maybe into the public arena of speaking and maximizing their abilities to get their message out to the world. So that one I can see clearly in you, and I can see your head nodding, so I don't even have to ask you if you see that in yourself. Are there other ways you see maximizers showing up in your?
Give me some examples.
Well, Christian Sherry, that's her number one thing, is maximizer.
Mm-hmm.
Because what she wants to do is take people and move them to be their best, to maximize their abilities to be successful. And she does that through constantly educating people and helping them learn and grow. And she would also tell you that she has little patience for people who don't want to learn and don't want to grow, because that's directly against her goal of maximizing.
Got me there.
Okay, so you share those frustrations. Yes. So any clients of yours that are watching this, they need to know that you're only going to settle for excellence from them and not.
Well, that makes sense, Steve. When I sign up people, one of the things that I need as a coach is that they are all in. If it's a group program, they should go through the program. If it is one-on-one, they should do the work. If they don't do it, then I let them go.
Exactly.
So there are a lot of coaches who would say, yeah, you can do the program as and when, you can refer to the content later on, but I would just let them go because it frustrates me.
Yes, that's the maximizer coming out. You're not seeing them progress.
Yes.
It's ultimately what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So your next one is communications.
My next one is communication. Yes.
All right. And so, which is evident in your life that you're good at communicating through writing and public speaking.
Yeah.
And you've made that a part of your current career in coaching. So that's something that probably helps feed your satisfaction in what you're doing and loving what you're doing.
Mm.
Does that definitely is you, right?
That definitely is me. In fact, when you said that I've made it part of my current career, I would say that in the corporate world, I was successful. I would say I was somebody who was viewed as a high achiever, and I did really well in the roles that I did after I found my thing, my people-related roles. And that was a huge part of it, of that success could be attributed to these strengths that we talked about, relationships, maximizing, because as a leader, that's what you've got to do. You've got to be able to influence people and help them become their best versions. And communication, I had a lot of visibility because I would do these town hall meetings and open houses, and the entire organization, the center, would see me. So yeah, a lot of that success can be attributed to these strengths, except I didn't know I didn't know the strengths models as such back then. But yeah, I can see that. Okay,
Well,
so my fourth one is
the Achilles heel to this, which I have not seen in you, but the Achilles heel is sometimes communicators have to fight the tendency to talk more than they listen, because they want to share, they want to get their message out there, so they're passionate about what they're talking about, and they don't always take a pause and a breath to let somebody else speak up, or for a communicator to stop and say, what can I learn from this person, and listen. So like I said, I don't see that in you and our friendship, but others who might have communication, they might struggle with that. Okay,
Thank
so
you
the
for
fourth
that.
one is?
Okay, my next one is responsibility.
So responsibility, that's the one top 5 strength you and I share. You take, people with responsibility tend to take ownership for their commitments and work products, with a very special emphasis on quality. Whatever they do, they want it to be quality, because they've committed to it and they take responsibility. That ownership doesn't allow them just to do something, I want to use a curse word, which I shouldn't use. But
go ahead.
Half-assed. They don't want to do it half-assed. Let's put it that way. God forgive me.
That's the perfect word to describe this.
And so that responsibility means that when we give people, a commitment, or, our word is binding to us, it's very important that we deliver those kind of things. The Achilles heel side of that, and tell me if you have this struggle, I do at times. You have a hard time saying no, and you feel guilty when you cannot give something your all. That's me.
I would say I used to be that person. About 4 years ago, I worked with a coach, and one of the key things I wanted to work with her, apart from setting up the coaching practice and the business side of things, was, I remember one thing that I brought to the conversation was, I'm not good with my boundaries. And that's something I want your help to help with. And so we did a lot of work on and I've come a long distance since then.
Good for you. Good for you.
So I'm able to say no, but I would rather not say no. But then I know it's something I've got to do for myself. I can't say yes to everything. So it's a learned skill. It didn't come to me naturally. It's an acquired skill.
yes, you sometimes you have to find ways to balance those Achilles heels, because I know, I don't know how long ago, several months ago, I was feeling burned out. And I sat down, and as I thought about why I was feeling burned out, I listed out all the things I committed to, and all these responsibilities were weighing on me
Yeah.
that I wasn't able to get to and deliver my best. And so that was causing me stress and causing me to feel burned out. So that's could be at the core of some people who are struggling with burnout, is they've got the responsibility strength, and it's, you have to learn those boundaries. That's an excellent example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And your fifth
And
one?
my fifth one is individualization.
Okay. So individualization is one of those strengths that I quite admire, because usually people with individualization, they look for unique things in others, and they're able to find those and connect with people. I'll give you an example. You know, I met this one guy who had individualization, and we were in this big group, and he said, "Steve, you know, what's that you're wearing?" And I'm wearing a bolo tie, which is a very unique accessory that a lot of people don't see, because it tends to be more Spanish origin, Southwest origin in the US. Typically not where I'm at in Chicago, that you get more of the straight lace tie. Some people might have bow ties, which would be pretty unique. But he noticed that, and he asked me about it, and allowed me then to tell people, yeah, this is why I wear this. And because there's a very touching story behind why I wear this. And people with individualization skills will find those things. And when they bring them out, they now are able to build a more deeper and closer relationship with those individuals. Does that sound like you?
Absolutely. That was one of the first few questions I had asked you as well about your time. And that's when you shared the story about your dad and what your dad meant to you. And probably that was our first conversation that was the first conversation we had, wherein we had shared so much about our personal lives with each other.
Yes, definitely. The Achilles heel side of this is you can sometimes focus on the individual more than the group,
yeah,
which can sometimes lead to difficulty in making people decisions, knowing, you know, is this, it just gets back into the boundaries, being able to make those right decisions with people, to say, this person is somebody I can't help. This is somebody that works well with me, and I can do things. So it can, the focus is so much on the individual that you don't always see the greater picture of what working with that individual could mean for your life. And I think earlier you said, yeah, you struggled with those boundaries, and maybe that was part of it too. You wanted to help everybody.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, possible. Yeah.
So in talking with you about your strengths, if you had to pick one strength out of those 5, which do you think shows up more in your life that really motivates you, that maybe if you had to think about it, that's what you would get up and want to do every day?
Oh, it's hard to choose one over the other. For example, if I were to look at responsibility, it ties into my number one value, which is integrity. Integrity for me is, if I've said something, or if I'm doing something, I will do it.
Yes.
And so responsibility may be number 4 on this list, but it actually if I don't do it, I'm just going to be uncomfortable because it will head on clash with my number one value. So I'm not sure if I can pick up one over the other.
Another way to look at it is I hear you talk about it, and again, using the YouMap filter, there's the driver, the passengers, and then what we call the fuel. Responsibility may be one of your fuel values, where it's just in everything you do.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily drive you to any one thing. And it may not be something that you look for. It's just like yeast through the dough. Your responsibilities is throughout your life. And that's what the fuel strengths are. They're there as kind of a foundation supporting the other strengths.
Yeah. All right. That gives me an idea. If I have to pick up one out of these 5, well, all 5 of them are important. But if I have to choose one, I'll pick up individualization, because it is really important for me to appreciate people for the uniqueness that they have. And actually, if I think about my whole coaching messaging, as a coach, my business messaging, it's all around helping people be seen and heard for who they are. And the vehicle I use is storytelling, their stories. But the whole deal is, let's see you for the amazing human being you are.
Excellent. Yeah. That is something that I can see motivates you, fires you up, gets you exciting, something that you want to see every day.
Yeah.
And, that does not minimize the other top 5 strengths, because there can be interchange, or, you can interchange in there sometimes depending on what you're doing. But again, individualization plays to the relator. So relator might be one of your passengers. Maximizer might be one of your passengers, because you are taking the individual and trying to figure out how to maximize them. And then, communications is in there, and maybe that's like responsibility. It's just fundamentally a strength that's a part of everything you do.
Yeah. And communication is such a great tool to make everything else possible.
Yes, definitely. And so, yes, looking at this, you are heavily on the people side between relator and influencer, maximizer's influencer. Strength, you have a responsibility, if I remember correctly, is on the execution side. So you've got one on that side of the fence. But as you can see today, understanding these strengths help you understand yourself, and may actually empower you to say, yeah, this is why I want to do this. So I'm going to go do this because I'm good at it, or I can be good at it, or, and that's what I love to help people see.
Amazing. Yeah. That passion that you're talking about, when we come from a place of strengths and values, people can see it. There's so many people who would watch me say on video, this is what my mission is, helping people be seen and heard. And people say, yeah, we get it. We believe it. Because it's true.
Yes. And just as you spoke there, that would be, knowing your strengths can be a part of your branding. And you can use them as a part of your branding. Lila Smith is a YouMap coach, and she does this with her clients very well. And there's just so many ways to look at strengths. One of the YouMap coaches that I love dearly is Shar Auckland. She uses it for physical training.
Wow.
Because what she'll do is, now that she knows your profile, she'll say, okay, you're not a thinker person. You are a social person. So I need to get you into social athletic type activities for fitness. So that might be a samba dance, that might be yoga, versus a thinking person who might be, oh yeah, I want to, or an achiever who I want to, get to 200 pounds. So now you're in the gym and you're trying to achieve your goal of reaching 200 pounds. But if you were to try and do that, you probably give up after one day of pumping weights. You probably walk out of the gym and say, that's enough. But if you go to the gym and you find that you can have that social interaction while you're doing physical stuff, even if it's just a walk with your significant other, those are the type of fitness behaviors that you probably can enjoy and utilize to bring health into your life. And again, it's back to the strengths you have are choosing some of the decisions. Why do I choose to go to yoga class instead of pumping weights? It's because you're probably a social individual.
That is such a big insight you have given me in this moment, Steve. Thank you so much for that. I'm somebody who would always choose a group class over working one-on-one with a personal trainer. Yes. Because I don't enjoy working out one-on-one. I like the attention and the extra input that comes in, but I don't enjoy it enough to do it.
Correct. And so you give up on it.
Yeah. So I would rather choose a yoga class than work one-on-one with a personal trainer. And thank you so much for that insight. I had no idea why I was doing that.
Yeah, see, that's why we're titling this "What Your Strengths Say About You," because in essence, if you understand those strengths, some of these decisions that may seem totally unrelated to you really do flow back to your strengths.
You have deepened my awareness about who I am and how I operate so much, Steve. I really, really appreciate that. So tell us, Steve, how can people experience this goodness, the goodness that I've been fortunate to experience from you today?
Well, they can reach me through LinkedIn. That's my main social platform. If they're interested in pursuing understanding themselves through the YouMap adventure, reach out, ask that. I'll be glad to send you the info on that and the pricing and all that for the coaching sessions. Usually a full YouMap session is, at least in my camp, is about 4 hours of coaching and 1.5 hours of personal work that you have to do, taking assessments to collect the information, and then for me as a coach to go over that information with you and help you realize, what does this mean that I'm a relator? I mean, assessments can identify certain things, but they don't always tell you how to apply it or what it means. And that's where I, as a coach, or other YouMap coaches, can come in to help you understand, here's how you can apply that.
Yeah, that implementation and application is so important. Otherwise, it's just another piece of information.
Yes.
Do you have anything exciting coming up, Steve?
Well, I mentioned I've got the book coming up, so I'm excited about that. It's been a labor of love and a long, slow process, man. I'll be so thankful to have that done. I've learned a lot about the publishing industry through it. I'm also busily about to release a coaching program with my business partner, Karen Markle, as we have put together a Free to Be Me program that largely takes people from a toxic environment who have, or come out of a toxic environment, whether that's work, whether that's spouse, or whether that's family, who through the hurts and the pains and all that feel worthless, they've lost their confidence, all those things. And the program is designed to help them see the value that they have and to gain the confidence to believe in themselves and reach out, take risks, and achieve things that they never thought they could achieve.
Beautiful,
So if
beautiful.
anybody's interested in that, if you know of somebody who's coming from that background, or even maybe not from that background, but just is struggling with confidence, that might be struggling from confidence because you got bullied as you're growing up. I mean, we don't often think of that as a toxic environment, but in essence it is. There's a lot of toxic things that we go through as human beings, and learning how to handle those and how to rise above those is what Karen and I specialize in, and we love helping people achieve that confidence.
And I can see all your strengths work and YouMap work, your storytelling, everything coming together beautifully to help people build their confidence as they transition out of toxic situations and rebuild a new life.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is going to be a powerful program. All the best for it.
Thank you very much. We are very excited.
Steve, before we let you go, if you have one big message that you want to share with our audience, what would it be?
What would it be? I was thinking about this morning. I'm just like, okay, I had these great words, and now can I remember these great words? But it was something to the effect that a confident person is someone who's willing to take risk and look like a fool doing it.
Wow.
Because their confidence is there. And if you follow any of my social media, you'll see a guy who's not afraid to be a fool because there's a deep-seated confidence in me. I'm proof of concept, so to speak, from that standpoint. But yes, you get to a place where you believe in yourself so much that you can take those risks, and even if you fail at it, okay, so what? It doesn't shatter me, it doesn't change me. It just means, okay, I wasn't as successful as I thought. Now what can I learn from that, and maybe try it again, or recognize that that's not in my wheelhouse, and now I need to try something else.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, that success or failure does not impact how worthy or how confident you feel as an individual.
Yes.
Beautiful. That is such a beautiful thing, and such a beautiful place to be in. Steve, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with us. It has been a delightful conversation.
Thank you, Peru. Anytime that you want to talk, I love talking with you.
Thank you, Steve.